Welcome to the latest edition of Russia Unmasked from the Center for Russian Studies in Kyiv, in which we challenge the propaganda published by the Kremlin against Ukraine and share Ukrainian perspectives. My name is Tony Meehan. I'm based in London. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine continues. So, as with every program, we start with a prayer. Long may she survive, endure, and prevail. Slava Ukrainsky. This week's episode looks at a series of stories in which you know there is more behind the story than the journalists have yet to discover. For example, the ink is not dry on the latest edition of the European US-Ukrainian peace plan, but that doesn't stop Russia from instant rejection. Mother Russia is never slow to reject any plan that does not meet its wishes and uses the opportunity to accuse the other party or parties of its own intentions for the enemy. So it spins the story in a way which once again accuses Ukraine of Russia's own actions. Security guarantees document by the West Kyiv aims at militarization. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the document on security guarantees prepared by the Western coalition of the willing, together with Kyiv, is far from a plan for peaceful settlement and is aimed at continued militarization, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman Zakharova said. Isn't that interesting? On January the 6th in Paris, a few days back now, participants in the so-called coalition of the willing, led by UK and France, signed a declaration with Kyiv entitled Robust Security Guarantees for a Solid and Lasting Peace. This document, according to Zakharova, is far from a peaceful settlement plan, as it is aimed not at achieving a lasting peace and security, but continued militarization, escalation and expansion of the conflict. I wonder if Mr. Putin wrote those words. According to her, the key provision of the document is the deployment of certain multinational forces on Ukrainian territory. She said coalition members intend to form these forces in order to assist the restoration of the Ukrainian army and ensure the containment of Russia after the end of hostilities. On that point, she's absolutely correct. Yes, it is. We need to restore Ukraine's army and we need to ensure that Russia is contained. So in the current military dispute, the party of the first part, namely Russia, is also the party of the military aggression against the party of the second part, namely Ukraine, whose military capabilities are minor when compared to those of the party of the first part. To establish and maintain a seemingly peaceful coexistence, the party of the second part, that is Ukraine, must demonstrate its ability with the support of allies, not simply to defend itself against any future aggression, but offer a military capability that the party of the first part, that means Russia, both recognizes and fears the consequences of any future transgression. As they used to say, QED, case made, a simple, straightforward solution which the party of the aggressor considers to be unreasonable, unfair and unacceptable. All parties withdraw and consider either counter-proposals or continue the war. Those are the options. In typical Russian style, why have one attack on one front when you can have another attack from inside the European Union? Have you thought of that? Unsurprisingly, our dear friend Viktor Orbán once again leads the attack against Ukraine from within his privileged position within the European Union. So, according to Mr. Orbán, Hungary considers Ukraine's 20-point peace plan unrealistic. Isn't that a shame? Chapter 2 of the same story, not surprisingly, Putin's voice inside the EU and NATO. Viktor Orbán, who sides with Russia, but from a different perspective, namely money, membership and timing, of course. It could be something to be a mixture of political revenge for an alleged historic grievances and jealousy, because he's been excluded and partly because his veto has been neutralized. Think about that. The discussions that were going on regarding the peace plan, they went around Orbán in order to neutralize his veto. Orbán considers the so-called 20-point peace plan untenable as it provides for Ukraine's accession to the European Union and the allocation of 800 billion by Western countries. Gergely Gulyas, who's the head of the Hungarian Prime Minister's office, said the Hungarian government discussed the plan at a cabinet meeting in January after it was prepared by Kyiv and published by Ukrainian media. It's like a slight, you can't have a plan produced by Ukraine and Ukrainian media can't publish it before anybody else sees it. He said the document envisions Ukraine joining the EU as early as 2027, a timeline Hungary considers unrealistic. Why? We believe this is impossible, and we are not alone in this. Gulyas said, noting that several other EU member states also oppose Ukraine's rapid accession to the bloc. Now, you must remember that Hungary is trying to set up a bloc within the EU to block anything it doesn't like, not only by its own single veto, but by the support of other members. And those other members are from the same family, if you understand what I mean. He added the plan also called for Western countries to provide Ukraine with 800 billion for reconstruction over a 10-year period. He then compared the figure to Hungary's own experience, saying the amount would be enough to cover pension payments in Hungary for 40 years. And he also notes that Budapest has only received 73 billion from the EU since joining the bloc. This is possibly true, but also Budapest, Hungary, has not been at war with Russia, defending the EU against Russian aggression. Think about that. He also warned that Budapest would not take part in implementing plans agreed on by Kyiv and Brussels under these conditions. So therefore, he's letting the people know his veto is still there. Representing Orbán, Gulyas, who is representing Putin, they're both all representing each other, offers opinions as political arguments without facts to support his opinions. I wonder who wrote that. The timing, the money, self-interest, pension payments are all irrelevant except to Hungary and the minority group which Hungary is attempting to establish within the EU. And why are they doing that? Because they wish to disrupt, confuse and damage the EU for his friend in Moscow. Honesty check for you. The European Union has a strict, non-biased application process to evaluate and decide on Ukraine's eligibility for membership, which Ukraine is progressing through the agreed stages despite the war. The money is a subject for further debate, and not forgetting potential Russian reparations and EU loans. Hungary's jealousy is there for all to see. It received only 73 billion, but for what? Nobody knows. But what we do know is that wars are expensive. By fighting off Russia, Ukraine has defended Europe, including Hungary. Time to change the story, time to change the continent from Europe to South America, this time Venezuela and the United States president and Russian propaganda. Following the removal of the Venezuelan President Maduro by US President, Russia vows to keep oil operations in Venezuela despite Trump claims. Now, we must remember that President Trump has said that he will take over the oil interests in Venezuela and run them. The Russian state-owned company, Russia-Rubisneft, apologies for the pronunciation, which manages Russia's oil assets in Venezuela, has said it will not leave the country, despite the United States President Donald Trump claiming the US will take control of the oil exports. The Moscow Times, which is an independent Amsterdam-based news outlet, says that Trump is also seeking to bring US companies into the rebuilding of Venezuela's oil sector, and has demanded that the country's new authorities cut economic ties with Russia and China. Meanwhile, the Russian company, whose name I will not repeat, said the company will continue to consistently fulfill its commitments in close coordination with international partners, giving priority to the sustainable development of joint oil production projects, infrastructure, and an effective response to emerging challenges. The company also said all its assets were acquired on market terms and are owned by the Russian state, and that it intends, together with Venezuela, to implement joint projects and expand industrial and technological cooperation on the principles of equality, mutual respect for property, and protection of investments. So in other words, they're saying, Mr. Trump, you can do what you do, say what you say, but it doesn't change anything because we're staying and we're going to keep our assets. The Wall Street Journal apparently reported earlier that Trump wanted to cut the oil price to $50 a barrel, and his administration is preparing for a far-reaching plan aimed at establishing a long-term control over Venezuela's oil sector. US officials are also weighing steps to block Russia and China from Venezuela's energy sector while increasing Washington's influence over global oil supplies. That'll be an interesting little exercise, won't it? In Washington, recently, the Senate blocked, and this is important to note, a bill to restrict the president's power to take further military action in Venezuela. That means he doesn't have to go to the Senate or Congress to seek their permission to undertake any military action in Venezuela. He can do it as he decides. So eat your heart out, Russia, eat your heart out, China. Some observations for you. The statements by the Russian-Venezuelan company are meaningless, unless, of course, Venezuela, the country, rejects Donald Trump and the US intervention in its domestic and economic affairs, which seems unlikely given the size of the United States and also the power at the fingertips of Mr. Trump. Let's leave Venezuela, let's leave South America there for the time being, and let's come a little closer to home. Changing the subject completely, there is a developing story that has Russian special services fingerprints all over it. Yulia Tymoshenko, who's the leader of the Fatherland Party, the parliamentary faction that is, in the Ukraine parliament, has said that audio recordings released by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine have nothing to do with her. On Facebook, she said, "I officially state the published audio recordings have nothing to do with me. I reject all the accusations, and as always, will prove their groundlessness in court. I have done this more than once before." By way of the background of this story, Tuesday the 13th of January, the Anti-Corruption Bureau reported that they had uncovered corruption involving the leader of a parliamentary faction. Sources told Ukrainska Pravda that the case concerns Yulia Tymoshenko. The anti-corruption body stated that Tymoshenko had been exposed for allegedly offering unlawful benefits to several MPs from other factions in exchange for voting for or against specific draft laws. The case has been classified under Article 3694 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine, that is, offering, promising or giving unlawful benefit. That was on the 13th. On the 14th of January, sources in political circles told that the anti-corruption agencies had served Yulia Tymoshenko with a notice of suspicion. She subsequently, NABU, the anti-corruption people, have released a recording which Tymoshenko, an unidentified MP, can be heard discussing a scheme for providing payments in exchange for voting certain ways. Like Ukraine's alleged attack, on Putin's palace, this will be finished in a couple of days by an acknowledgement by all parties that there is no truth in the story, or the Fatherland Party will be looking for a new leader. Anyway, that's all for now. So from all of us here at the Center for Russian Studies in Kyiv, thank you. Please share the podcast with your friends and those you think who will be interested. The online address, as you know, is Russia Unmasked at YouTube. We'll be back with more news from Kyiv soon. So until then, Slav Ukraini. Ukrainians were, are, and always will be here. Volodymyr Zelensky. Thank you.